Good morning, everybody. I've got Adriana Aviles, who is running for NYC Council District 19. We're going to talk a little bit about Adriana, her background, why she's running. Probably going to talk about the New York mayoral race. But before...
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Pain, dang, is in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Pain, dang, is in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Ha ha! Well, that's a pretty good one, Adriana. You've been practicing that one. I love it. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you on, and was fun discovering you through the ofthepeople.us site, which is a side project, nonprofit that me and my buddies are working on, and glad we were able to connect through that platform. But why don't we start off with just tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Adriana Aviles before she started running for office?
Sure. Really quick though, I want to ask you, how are you with that pepper spray? How's that?
Oh yeah. So that's right. We follow each other on Twitter. I think on Friday I had gotten some pepper spray previously. And then I said, I've got two boys, 11 and 13-year-old boys. So I said, hey, guys, let's go test this thing out and make sure it works. And so, they're 11 and 13-year-old boys. So they're like, yeah, let's go. So we went back. We sprayed it on a tree. And I remember pepper spray being like way more potent because what I have now is pepper gel, which is different, which is like it's like dishwasher, like liquid detergent kind of consistency. So it doesn't like spray back and kind of fumigate the whole room. It just gets the person that you're kind of aiming it at. So anyway, but their mom, my wife, had told them in the past how we had tested it when we lived in Seattle years and years ago, and it kind of fumigated the whole room because that was spray. But this was gel. So I was like, it was kind of a letdown because we were expecting because we just sprayed on a tree. But when we went up to the tree, we didn't notice anything. And then I kind of tapped on it thinking like, what's going on here? Like, is this thing working? And then I was like, well, I must have gotten a dud. So then I thought I'd just kind of play around with them. And I put my finger on it and I kind of smelled it. And then they were like, oh, I dare you to put it all over your face. And I thought like it would be kind of fun because I was like, I'm sure clearly this is expired. It's not working. So I did it. I put it all over my upper lip and I didn't feel anything for like a minute. And then it was like, it's like sometimes you eat spicy food and it hits you later. Mm-hmm. Like it's not instant hot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my Friday afternoon, and then we had to quickly return home and drink a lot of milk and shoot a lot of cold water. They enjoyed it. They thought it was pretty funny.
It reminds me of I don't know if you've seen the movie A Christmas Story.
Yes.
They do the double dare, tongue on the tree.
Yeah, the double dog dare. I know you can't turn that down. It was. I mean, on the one hand, they had challenged me. And on the other hand, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get super like big time dad points because I'm going to accept the challenge knowing that there's nothing to it. But yeah, didn't work out that way. Luckily, it was just a couple drops. It's potent stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I thank you for asking. Hopefully you haven't had any encounters or self-inflicted pepper spray wounds lately.
That's such a dad story because my husband is like, yeah, he touches everything. If you're hurt, he's like, does this hurt? And I'm like, why do you have to touch everything? Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, with my boys, they do bring out the inner boy in everybody, and like kind of bring you back to your childhood. So yeah, I think if Mrs. Nerd were with us, we would not have done that, but she was shopping, so she may need to get a babysitter for us or something. Who knows?
Well, there it starts. I am a mom and a wife, so I do have similar stories like that. Well, I can't even count up. Right, it's too many. So I have a 8-year-old son, an 11-year-old son, and a 13-year-old daughter. So my kids are still pretty young. And
your daughter probably does she help look after the boys? Because the girls tend to be a little more mature.
Oh,
than the
without
boys,
a doubt.
Yeah.
She's so responsible.
Yeah.
I feel bad because growing up, my mom was a single mom raising 7 kids, right? So 6 of us were girls and my brother was the last one. So a lot of responsibility on the older ones, which, I don't know if it's an immigrant thing or just a feminine thing. I don't know, but we put so much responsibility on the older ones, especially the girls. That sometimes I wonder if it's fair or not, but we just do it. So she's pretty responsible with her brothers,
Yeah. It's so weird because I work, my day job is in healthcare, and they often say when somebody is, let's say a parent is struggling with health, kind of in their senior post-retirement years, it's almost always the daughter that is really on top of stuff. It's not like the sons aren't useful,
no,
but they just don't step up the way sometimes daughters can.
Yeah, and that's great that you're saying that, because that's also part of the conversations for me running as well. But I don't think it's stepping up. I think you guys are just built a certain way.
Yeah, maybe.
I think my husband went through a tough time taking care of his father with dementia and Alzheimer's. Didn't live with him. And then his mom at home as well with him, So I had to tell him once in a while, can you just take it easy? Can you just do this? Can you just do that? So I really don't blame men. I think it's just something in your natural way of being that you don't have that, right? You don't have the maternal instinct. I don't know if that's what that is, but I don't I've come to realize that you guys just sometimes don't get it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It really is. It's tough. So
my wife reminds me, she always I help pitch in with my mom, and who's still independent, but she's in her 80s now, and my wife always reminds me, you're great, if there's anything my mom needs, I will be there for her, but I don't go above and beyond in terms of expressing concern and compassion. I'm more kind of pragmatic about we need to help you fix your cable, or we need to help you assemble this furniture. I'm there, but sending flowers for no reason, that is not my thing. Or kind of that bedside manner is something I guess all of us can work on, but definitely I can, and I know a few other dudes that probably could work on it too.
Well, my brother, the same thing. He'll say to my mom, because she passed away last year, but when she was getting older and very fragile, he would be like, "Oh, let's buy her a computer. Let's buy her this. This will help her." No, that's too complicated. But you guys like to buy something, and I don't know. It's supposed to fix everything. I don't know, but I know you mean well, but no.
No, I hear you. So tell me a little bit about growing up. So you mentioned a big family, one of the older siblings.
I'm actually the youngest of the girls. There's seven of us all together. I'm the youngest of the girls.
Okay, so you lucked out then. You didn't have to take care of anyone younger than yourself.
No, you're absolutely. I really was blessed. My mother came here as a widow, pregnant with 4 of my sisters, and to come for a better life. She came from Colombia. And she really, with nothing, hardly anything. And my sisters came here and they worked at a young age, 14 or something like that. My mother had 3 jobs, and then she met my father along the way. It didn't work out, but now she has 7 kids, so we were on public assistance. Someone's going to say something to me, but the cheese line, I remember going on the cheese line. I remember going to Jamaica to get all the services. It was tough. I really applaud my mom and what she always said, onward and upward as far as education. Like, as long as I get you guys in school, I've done my job. Like, that's it. I just need you to get through school. And she always moved out of neighborhoods because she felt they weren't that safe or whatever. She always moved, but my mom did a pretty amazing job with us, and I take that with me, like about the immigrant story. And education is number one for me. Education just sends ripples everywhere. Like, the schools make your neighborhood. If children get educated, they can move forward in life. There's so many conversations with education. And then public safety. I was a police officer. I'm retired now. About 5 years I'm retired. So I take those conversations with me too. And then the seniors. We have a highest rate of seniors in the city, in my district.
Wow. Tell me about being in the NYPD. What was that like?
Everyone's like, that's so exciting.
I got these images of you, like, speeding around in a patrol car and taking down some bad guys. How did it go down?
Well, I'm going to give you a better image because everyone gets excited with this image. So 12 years on patrol. I loved it. I was on the streets of Corona, Queens, which was the epicenter, right, of coronavirus, on the midnight. And I mean, within my own people, Colombians and a lot of South Americans. But after there, I transferred to the mounted unit, which is the horses.
Oh. Wow.
So I was there for about 6 years in the mounted unit. And that was definitely fun. That was a lot because it was a big difference between going to the street cop where nobody wanted you to knock on their door to being on a horse where everybody wanted to, pet your horse, and you were everyone's, can you take a picture with my kids? That was a really positive experience. And then my last 4 years, I retired out of transit, which was in the subways.
Now, how did you go from mounted to transit? Was that hey, you wanted to take on more responsibility, or was there like a maximum time? Because I would have just stayed in the mounted unit as long as possible.
Well, I say that it's hard. Candidates should be transparent. And personal stories are personal stories, but I like to share my personal stories. Not everyone does that. So my personal story is my husband and I were having a tough time, and him and I actually worked in the same unit, in the mounted unit.
Oh.
And he was a sergeant and I was a police officer.
Right.
But we didn't work in the same spot. We just worked in different boroughs. But I don't know about you, but my husband would come home thinking he was my boss. So
sergeant.
It wasn't pretty. It was really, so I had to transfer out of there to save our marriage, put it that way. So I didn't stay. He stayed, I didn't stay.
And you guys are still married now?
Yes.
Well, congrats.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah.
They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and I firmly believe that. So
I buy that. Like when I moved to Seattle many years ago, my wife and I spent like an entire summer every day together, like 24 hours a day. And I think we both realized that like we do need to have our own time to just kind of pursue our own interests and have our own kind of like kind of autonomy. And so I today could never imagine working with my wife. I don't think that would work out well because of the boundaries, like like work versus home. So what was it like working in transit in the subways? I remember I grew up in New Jersey, and in the 80s, and the New York City subway was pretty intense back in the day. I'm guessing it's much nice, like sort of more under control nowadays, or what was it like?
Well, now I know it's switching back to where it's not so good anymore. Like there's a lot of homeless out there. But when I was in transit, it wasn't so bad, but still, to me, it was really a wake up call, because being on the streets, You know, in the transit system is home to a lot of homeless and a lot of mentally ill people.
Yeah.
And it's really, okay, I'm going to say it was pretty disgusting working in transit. Like, for instance, you would see people going to the bathroom in the middle of the platform. You would see people just doing obscene things on trains. And it's really not a good place. I've seen a lot of like females, young females, people following them on the trains. It's not a good atmosphere at all. So I kind of had to leave there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it wasn't, and people don't realize that until they take the trains, and how much people say, and we're going to get on this discussion, I'm sure, eventually, about defunding the police. But when you're in the train at 1 o'clock in the morning, and and there's a lot of mentally ill people out there, a lot of people that do want to do bad by you. They want to rob you, or they want to sexually assault a female. 1 o'clock in the morning, when you're out on a Friday night in a club, and you kind of got a couple of drinks, you really want some law enforcement around there. And people don't realize how bad it could be out there. I one day, just to make a really quick story, there was a young lady, it was like 2:30 in the morning, and and it was like a Friday night or Saturday night, and she had thrown up on herself. She passed out. She had a short skirt on, and the train was empty except for about like spots around her, and there was men like around her. Do you know what I mean? Like vultures. And I woke her up. I took her out of the train. We went to the bathroom. I rinsed her. She doesn't remember how she got where she was. She lives in Manhattan. She ended up in Jamaica, Queens.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So it wasn't, people don't realize what law enforcement does. I understand the different things that are going on, but when something like that happens, you really have to wake up and say you need law enforcement to be out there, because there's a lot of people that want to do bad by other people.
Yeah. And did you ever get sort of in a situation where you have to use force, and obviously you don't want to use excessive force, but you also need to protect yourself and kind of get control of the situation?
Yeah.
And then if someone's sort of under the influence, I'm guessing that makes it even more complicated. Like, did that ever happen in your time?
I tell you, you just hit the nail on like this one story that I had, and it was one story. This never happened to me in almost 20 years I was working with the police force, but it happened my last year in transit. And like I said, I worked at midnight. I love working the midnight shift. It was my favorite shift always. I'm not a morning person, and so not at all. So so when you do the trains at the midnight, the train conductor asks you to vacate everyone from the trains. If somebody's sleeping, you have to go wake them up. So here I am. The radios don't work too well underground. It's really that's something that needs to be fixed. It's very dangerous for the officers down there. They call it the hole. So so he says, "Can you wake up this man? He's not waking up, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Fine, sure." I said, I take my stick, I pat him on his leg. I said, sir, time for you to go. He woke up. He must have been drugged, or I don't know what he was on. His eyes wide open, and he went for me, attacked me. There was nobody there. It was just me and him. So we were struggling. Like, literally, I could hardly get on my radio. So thank goodness I took out my pepper spray, which we were talking about. And I was able to spray him. Yeah. Like, while I'm struggling with one hand, as he's going like this, I'm able to cuff him to the pole. Oh. And yeah, it was crazy. And then I called for help, for backup, which took a while to get there. But then he started to cry. Like, why did you do that to me? His complaint, he made a complaint against me for excessive force, verbal abuse. It was insane. Like, people don't realize what officers go through. And here I am. I'm 5'1", just so you know, Tom. I'm not very big. I'm not very tall. This was a grown man. He must have been like young man, 24. And that was where I used force, not excessive force. I don't think so, right? Because I had to do what I had to do. But at the end of the day, he was crying because I did it,
Yeah. It sounds like he probably had a lot going on in his bloodstream at that point. Yeah. That's so tough. I mean, one of the things I've been reading about lately in New York and San Francisco and other parts of the country is, have you been seeing any or hearing about any of this, like, violence against Asian Americans? And
Of course.
what's going on there? Like, is that just like it's always been happening, but people are reporting on it more? Or do you think it's actually happening more?
I think it's happening more. I think because of the political climate that we just came off of, that people feel they can say whatever they want. It used to be you thought about things, but you didn't say it out loud because they were rude, or you shouldn't be saying things. Your mother taught you not to ever say things. Keep it to yourself if you don't agree or whatever. So I feel people just say things because now they just want to be mean and hateful. And I think definitely nowadays people are just angry, they're miserable, and now they're taking it out on someone. I have a large Asian population in my district, and I'll say that I love my Asian neighbors. I love my Asian community. They're all about education and family, but they're very quiet. They're very to themselves. And as a police officer, I learned that people that have issues, that are crazy, go for the people that are to themselves and quiet. Like, they'll go for you. So I just feel like the Asian community is being targeted because they're so reserved, almost like they don't bother anyone pretty much. And I think just a lot of wackos are out there, like, really targeting them for that reason.
What do you think they should do? Like this, what do you think the community, the Asian American community should do? Like, is it sort of practice better self-defense, or is it like organize marches or petitions? Like what can the community do?
Well, now the young people are so involved with politics and everything. Now that everything is on Zoom, everything is on virtual platforms, I think young people are coming out and they want to be engaged, they want to be active. So I think, especially now with cell phones and everything that we have accessible, so I feel going to our young population and saying, step up and do something. So I think whether it's either, I'm not saying get in the middle of it, but I'm saying at least defend your neighbor. Like, say, like, what are you doing? Or take their video or take the picture or go to help them. They're on the floor. They're doing so much now on social media. They're putting pictures out of this person that's saying something. I think they're doing a good job, but I think more people need to step up that way. And I think the young people will do that. I think we just got to keep going, because the younger generation, it's hard for them. The older generation, it's hard for them to change their ways, right? It's a cultural thing. So it's just the way they were raised. So I think now the younger people can step up if we keep going to them and say, listen, if you see this, say something, do something, but do not engage or get in the middle. I do not agree with that at all.
So here's an interesting hypothetical. Like, I got the pepper spray partly for self-defense, but also I was thinking, well, if I saw someone being attacked, then I might give a little to the attacker.
Sure.
But you're saying, hey, one shouldn't get in the middle of those things. You
know, what happens is that if I'm getting attacked, that's fine, right? I could pepper spray whoever it is, whoever it is. But you getting in the middle of it, first of all, I've seen people come out of the woodwork to attack the person who's trying to help the victim.
Oh.
So you don't know what's going to happen. You can pull over and say, what are you doing? All of a sudden they have friends around you, and now you're getting hurt. I personally wouldn't want to be responsible for that. I think it's great that you want to step up, but there's other ways of doing it. I don't know. I think it's a chance that people are taking when they get right in the middle of it and actually do physical harm to someone else who's doing it too. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think it's just you have to be very cautious and careful.
Yeah. I mean, it's I heard the story about this dude that got cut, his face got kind of slashed. Yeah. And he was saying it happened. I think he said it happened on the subway, and he was very sad that he saw everybody watching it happen, but everybody nobody did anything. And on the one hand, you wish there was sort of a collective effort to help this man. On the other hand, like, if some crazy person's like slashing with a knife, I'm not sure I want to be the first one to kind of put myself in between. Right. Because I don't even know if I would be effective at kind of helping the situation. Like, what do you do in that? What would you do?
But see, that's different. You're talking to me, like my initial response would be to do something. Yeah. And my husband probably doesn't want to hear this, but I'll be like, I'll get in the middle of it, because that's just me. I would be like, I'll follow this person. What are you doing? I'll definitely confront them. That's me. That's just my personality. But like someone who hasn't done that for years, I think a collective response is an amazing way to do it. Like, if you see other people around you,
Yeah.
if you a lot of people step in once someone steps in, right?
Right.
But to do it by themselves, I think it's very, I don't know. That's a hard thing to say out there, because I don't want somebody else getting hurt and then no one else steps in.
Yeah.
You know?
Are there like alarms in the New York City subway, or no? You can't pull a lever.
Only if you're on the train itself, there's a lever to actually stop the train, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not like the cavalry is going to come within 30 seconds.
Right. No, exactly. That means nothing. It just means everyone's going to be pissed off because you did this.
Right. Are there officers on every line, or is it just sort of randomly distributed?
They try to. It's randomly, but there's not that many officers out there to cover out there in the street. But the trains, oh no, I could be the only. I was pretty much the only officer, maybe like in 3 lines on the midnight.
Oh wow. Yeah. So if something happened, it was probably improbable for you to have time to get there, to be notified, and then get there and then do something about it.
Oh yeah, without the trains, particularly the trains. If you're on the street, the cavalry comes within before a minute. Without a doubt. But on the streets, it's not very it's not a safe environment for anyone.
Yeah. Do the trains have cameras or no?
Not the trains, but when you go to the booths, they have cameras up there.
Oh yeah. Man, that sounds so. Tell me about New York now. I haven't been back there. I was there in the summer of 19. Had a great time. That was back, obviously, pre-COVID, and God, I ate so well in New York. I just love the diversity. Like, you could have sushi, or you could have like Brazilian, then you could have Cuban, then you could have Italian. It was just like it's the melting pot, right? And so what's it like now in NYC? It just must be totally different.
Well, truthfully, I've only gone to Manhattan a couple of times during COVID. I have 3 kids, and I've been pretty busy here at home. We went for the tree. We went for a couple of things during the winter, but I haven't really gone. I just pretty much probably like you, see things on Twitter or whatever it is. And I love Manhattan. I love the city. My daughter hopefully will go to high school in the city. So I really think it's an incredible place. But here in Queens, where I live, it's very diverse too. So it's like I can go anywhere and get any. Right. It's so amazing. And to see the diversity of people in the street, I love that. I don't like being somewhere where, not to say everyone looks the same, but I don't see all the different cultures. So I really kind of feel uncomfortable with that. I love seeing all the diversity in the street. So that's something. And Queens is amazing. So.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the diversity in Queens now. Is it my recollection, again, this is like just going to the city in the 80s and 90s on the weekends. I seem to recall there were clear pockets of communities. You have Chinatown, then you have Upper West Side, and they're just different kind of groupings. Are we seeing more mixing now, and how is that working out if it is happening more? You always wonder, is it a melting pot, or is it just like this kind of collection of different pockets of culture?
It's funny you say that. Is that going around with my candidacy now, I'm going around in my district and talking to people. That's all you hear. Oh, times have changed, people have changed, the families have changed. So I think definitely those groups that used to be in certain neighborhoods have gotten almost not inundated, but a lot of different cultures have come into these groups now. So I think I think personally it's more spread out. But there's definitely pockets. Of course, there's Flushing, which is mainly Asian. Corona, Queens, which is mainly Hispanic. You have Astoria, which there's a lot of Greeks. So you definitely have your pockets where you can go. And I'm like, oh, I want Greek food. I'm going to go to Astoria, right? I'm going to go, but I can go here to my neighborhood and look for a Greek place. I can go here and look for a Colombian place. So it's not so much where I have to really search. And I think it's all over Queens, which I really appreciate. And doing what I'm doing, I didn't even realize in my district, and because you get comfortable in your home, whatever it is, you don't realize it. But in my own district, I have a huge pocket of Hispanics, like Latino restaurants, which I was excited about because I always thought I had to go to Corona, Queens. And I have it right here in College Point, Colombian restaurants, Mexican restaurants. So I was pretty excited. It's not too far, like 15 minutes from my house, which I really, really, really enjoy.
Nice. So tell me about the decision to run for office. Was that a hard call? What was the conversation like with your husband and the rest of your family? Like, what was the motivation?
So it had different layers. It had different steps. So about 2 years ago, I met, and I'll say names when I can, but I met my local elected here, Paul Vallone, whose term limits here. This is actually his seat that everyone's going for. He's term limited. So I met him. I'm also president of the Community Education Council, which is like a school board in my district. So I'm president. So I went to him to just talk to him and introduce myself. And then he says to me, Mrs. Aviles, would you like to go for my seat? You know, it's up in a couple of years. And I looked at him like he was crazy. I looked at him like, what, are you out of your mind? I'm not going to be a politician. And that was about like over 2 years ago. So it stayed in my brain. So then like a year later, I was in another community and they were raising money for someone else, another elected in my district here, who hasn't been in the conversations for a long time. And I said, wow, he's running again? Somebody needs to run against him, because we shouldn't have the same conversations we had when he was around. So that was another thing that stayed in my brain. Yeah. And now, past year, someone called me who was not a friend of mine. We never had a conversation. He says to me, you know, I've watched your social media. I'm reading everything you put out there. I think you would be an amazing candidate. So I said he's like, you really need to have a conversation with your husband. And I said, well, that's okay. You know, it's funny you say that, blah, blah, blah. I said, let me talk to my husband about this. Because my husband always said, you know, you want to go for politics. I said, no, I don't. You're crazy. No, I don't. And then finally it came to a head this last year. And I had the conversation with my husband. He goes, without a doubt, 100%, I'll back you. And then I had a conversation with my children too, because you know, they might be in the spotlight as well. Yeah. And then my other members of my family. So that's how I, you know, decided to run and make it official.
So tell me about like the campaign. What's going to be your primary focus? What are the top issues that your constituents are kind of most interested in hearing about?
It really depends on who you're talking about in my district. So the older crowd is more about, which is to me so obvious. No one wants more taxes. No one wants. There's certain things that are always conversations, but they're so obvious to me. Of course, I'm not going to say we want more taxes, but that is like the conversation for the older people. And then we have the younger families are moving in. That's education, number one across the board, education, because if you don't have good schools, your home is not going to be as valued as it was without the good schools. People move to my district because we have the number one and number two schools in the city. Oh, wow. Yeah, nice. Our test scores across the city are number one, number two for state tests. So a lot of people come here for that reason. So education, the culture, number one, and then public safety. We have very safe neighborhoods. We work hand in hand with our local precinct, the 111 precinct, the 109 precinct. So, and a lot of people are older here. So of course, everyone wants to make it safe for the seniors and for the children. So those are my top of the line conversations: education, public safety, and of course the taxes and the small businesses. We have the highest number of storefronts that are closed in the city, percentage wise, in Little Neck, in the entire city. So those are all conversations that we need to discuss, and really I need to advocate for our community. And but education definitely, without a doubt, is number one on my platform. Why do you think your district does so well on education when other districts seem to struggle? The culture is here in my district where education is number one. So we have different people, like I said, their main purpose of coming to this district is the schools. So if you come for a main purpose, you're all going to be in the same conversations, which is let's make our schools better or continue what we're doing. So like I said to you before, it's not just the Asian culture, but there's a lot of people here in this community that really want good schools. But our Asian community, without a doubt, education goes far beyond. Without it, and for me too, as an immigrant, my mother always said, education, education.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself is the number one thing that I think it affects all of us in this district, where we can really advocate, and it helps our homes, it helps our seniors. So
yeah, that's interesting in that it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like this district has way more educational funding.
nope.
Or class sizes are maybe that different than other districts, but I guess it does kind of point to the notion of the families and the kids and the kind of like support and prioritization at home of education is just as important, maybe more so, than what happens in that classroom.
Oh, yes. If you have families that are willing to engage. So I'm part of the PTAs, two of my schools here.
Right.
So, and that's where I started all this education and all this, these conversations. But when you have families that really want to engage with the schools and how can we make things better? How can our students achieve a higher grade level? Or how can we as families help the schools? Then without a doubt, this is what makes our schools number one in the city, because they want to do that. They are looking to do that, and they will sacrifice. A lot of families will sacrifice so much to make our schools number one across the city. And I'm not saying that other families are less, because other families have different priorities. You may need to put food on your table. I know growing up, we had to put food on the table. It wasn't like we had food money for tutoring or whatever it is. Yeah. But when you have families that are willing, that can do this, not willing. Willing is different, but when you can do this, and I don't mean rich people. We don't have a lot of rich people in my community. We have there's a large number of families here that are low income that qualify as free lunch families. And a lot of people think that my district is people that are rich. People have money because we have trees, we have beautiful homes. But no, we have a large number of free lunch families that qualifies them because of their income. So, but they sacrifice a lot to make education number one in their household.
Let's go back to the law enforcement stuff. What's your view on the defund versus reform versus, put money into the community in other ways? Where do you land on that one?
Well, I definitely don't say defund the police. Without a doubt, I do not say that. I mean, I think that people are saying that, don't realize how important it is public safety plays a part in our community. Our officers need the resources and the money and the allocations to do their job correctly. Whether or not the officers are being educated about our immigrant communities, that's another story. There's no reason why we can't do something better with the police academy as far as the classes, the curriculum, have them go out we have field training after you graduate from the police academy. There's no reason why these new officers cannot go to each and every community for a little while and learn about those communities, because many officers are not from the city. They're from Nassau and Suffolk. And it's not, let's leave it New York City residents. You can't do that to the officers because we don't get paid much. So if you don't get paid much and you're living in New York City, you're going to have a problem. Yeah. So a lot of our officers live in Long Island and Nassau and Suffolk, where they can afford a home because there's two incomes. Their wife has another income, or their husband. So they come here and they become police officers. But they need diversity training. They need to know about the different communities within our city. And I think that we definitely can do better on, without a doubt. Maybe the psychological profiling too, before you become a police officer, can weed out some officers that definitely have some kind of issues as far as maybe they are racist. There's a probational period for officers. That is the time where we should really look into who we have on our police force before they continue on the police force and can cause some kind of damage between the communities and the police force.
Definitely a complicated issue, and it's great that to get your perspective on it, having served in the police department, but also working with communities that rely and interact with law enforcement. Let's shift gears for a second and talk about the New York City mayoral race. A lot of the audience for this channel has a strong affection for Mr. Andrew Yang, and I'm curious. I'm curious, what's your take on his run? How do you think he's doing? We should also talk about Adams and Wiley. I think they're compelling and competitive as well. What's the Aviles kind of summary of the New York City mayoral race?
Well, personally, when he was running for president, and it didn't happen, but I saw what was going on with the city even before he made his announcement. And I'm looking for it, and I can't find it. I don't know what it is with Twitter, but I had put a tweet that said, "Can you come to New York City and clean it up?" And it said that way before his announcement. So when he did, I was like saying that a couple times on Twitter. I'm like, it would be great to have him. It'd be great to have him. That's how I feel about it. I think he's very personal. I think he's data driven. I don't think that he has certain ties with certain groups that I think that have been in these same conversations that have not been doing right by our city. I think all these special interest groups, we need to have somebody that does not owe them anything, and to have someone who has an open conversation on a federal level. I think that's amazing. I think he has a whole package. I think he has young ones. He's very personable. So, I mean, I can go on about Yang, but that is my take on Yang. I think he really brings a breath of fresh air. As far as the other politicians, they may have good intentions, but my take is out with the old, in with the new. I don't like to hear, it's been very tough for me with my race, looking at all the different things you have to go through for support as far as endorsements and all the unions and all these special interests. When I know in my mind what you have to go through, and I see all these other candidates that do all these other things, then I kind of feel like there's something there that I don't like as a regular person. Like, what kind of ties do you have? So I don't really. So as far as maybe Eric Adams, he was on the police force. I don't know. I don't really know. I did do a lot of research about these different candidates, but I just don't like someone who I feel has been on this platform already with the same conversations. It just doesn't sit well with me. And whether it's someone that's been in the mayor's office already doing another job, I just feel there's something there that I just want to just cut the ties and let's just get somebody fresh into the conversation.
It's certainly like when you look at the slate of candidates in the primary right now, there's a lot of folks who, in a good way, have a lot of experience in New York City politics, but also like they're steeped in it. And if you're looking for fresh ideas and a new perspective, then it seems like Yang would be kind of the standout candidate. What's your take on? I know there were a lot of supporters of other candidates for mayor saying, hey, he went to upstate New York during the pandemic, and, he, I think, took a subway to the Bronx, but then he didn't indicate that he was going to change lines. And then there was a thing about the bodega saying, oh, that's not really a bodega. What's your view from inside New York when you hear those combos?
I think the haters will hate regardless of what happens. So they're looking for something with Yang. I mean, as far as him going to Poughkeepsie, wherever it is.
I think it was Poughkeepsie, yeah.
Family first, right? So he did it for his family. Who blames him? I definitely don't, because there's lots of candidates that go away to the Hamptons or whatever it is. I don't know where they're going. So I don't even know why that's a part of the conversation. Definitely your children first. If he has special needs child that needs whatever he, for his family to move forward. People don't, just because you're a candidate doesn't mean that you're disregarding everything else. So for instance, if you love your city and you're willing to do so much and you're part of the city conversations and part of everything else, I think people need to be open-minded about that. So those, and then taking the train, I don't even know what that is. And the bodegas, because, just because I wasn't raised in the middle of, let's say, the Bronx and talk about a bodega, like I wouldn't even know. Like, so what does that mean? Just because, so that's something bad against me? I don't know. If people just really reach for things to really look for a negative, instead of saying, at least he's taking the trains. At least he's in the stores in our city. At least he realizes the not the bad things, the shortcomings of the city for his family. At least he realizes all these things and he can bring it back to the city and we can work on that. So instead of spinning it on a negative thing, I think people should be looking the other way. Well, now he knows. Now he knows his it's very difficult when people talk that way, because it's like glass is half full almost, or glass is half empty.
So it sounds like are you endorsing Andrew Yang for mayor, or are you publicly?
I can say that straight out. I'm very transparent, and it is what I mean. I went through my cycles with him, like, because I can't say, oh my gosh, this is it. But like in the beginning, I was for him. I had a little lapse about him, something which I was like, let me look at, because there's so many other candidates, and I'm like, let me not just be so. And then all of a sudden, I was like, okay, still. So I can do that tomorrow again. Oh, look what happened. So people are just, you need to stop saying, not you, people in general, to stop being like, you said this yesterday. Like my husband's the same way. Why do you change your mind all the time? I don't understand. Why can't I change my mind? You can't say no to computers to the kids and the next day say yes. I'm like, why not? Why can't I do that? You have to stay the way you are. So people just need to get off of that and just say that people do change and they educate themselves, and maybe you can have a conversation, you change your mind. Yeah.
I have a hardcore, unfortunately, Trump supporter in my family, my brother. And his number one attack line whenever we debate is like, Tom, you voted Republican in the 90s. And I'm like, bro, that was like 20 years ago, man. Like that party doesn't look anything like it did in the 90s.
Move on.
Yeah. So, so I'm glad you're staying kind of like on top of the latest stuff, and totally respect every voter should continuously research and think about what's best for the city up until, they fill out that ballot. Anything else that we didn't touch on, Adriana, that you wanted to discuss before we wrap up?
No, I was actually looking at your screen for Nerds for Humanity screen here, and today's Pi Day. I don't see anything on Pi there, by the way.
That is true. That is true. I don't even see it on the background.
I did not see that, Tom.
Yes. We'll have to. Happy Pi Day. 3.14. I don't know what the other digits are, but it is a pretty magical number. Yeah. And whoever came up with the way to calculate the circumference of a circle using pi, like, that's some brain power. We need some of that to solve. We have a complex world today as well. Yeah. And I just wanted to say, for any of you who are watching this and you're like, wow, this Adriana, she's got a head on her shoulder. She's trying to do the right thing. I like where she's coming from. Go to Aviles4nyc.com. and you can check her out. And thank you also for listing yourself on ofthepeople.us.
Of course.
And by the way, speaking of the people, what's your take on basic income? And Yang's talking about a pretty big pilot if he were to become mayor. Do you think, how do you think that would go down in the city?
It's just one of those conversations, like no taxes, like that. It makes sense. Like, why wouldn't anybody want to base UBI? Like, it does. What would you even say against that? It just, I don't. Now, if you take it from certain parts of the city, then I understand. But what's the plan? But it just makes sense. So I don't even know. Yay.
Right. Yeah. I guess, the biggest criticism I've heard in general about basic income is, the most common one is like, oh, well, then if people get like a few $100 a month, they're going to quit their job and just like play, video games all day. But I don't think that's kind of ridiculous, because a lot of people are struggling. And especially now with COVID, we've seen that so many people, and they say the minimum wage, $15, even that doesn't cut it. Like, I remember my mom having 3 jobs with her minimum wage. So to live, and even though you don't live in New York, but people who live in New York know you cannot pay rent at $15 an hour. And how about if you have a family? Like, what is that even about? So whatever help you can get on a regular basis. I'm not talking about people that like have a lot of money. I'm talking about regular, why not? So without a doubt, people are just,
I don't know. It's just a ridiculous conversation. Like, why? Of course, why not? I take it out if I needed it. Why not? Everyone needs a hand once in a while. Everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing is my sense is Yang will implement this pilot with a lot of measurement and research and sort of analysis after. So, in the spirit of the scientific method, like, why not try something, see how it goes? You might be pleasantly surprised. Maybe it doesn't work out the way we thought, and then we'll learn and can tweak it. But yeah, it would be exciting. And I think it would put New York really on the cutting edge of policy innovation, and it would potentially be an example for the rest of the country, as New York has been in its history for so many other things as well.
Without a doubt, I think New York City is always on the cutting edge, whether it's our school system, whether it's with the police force, whether it's all these different things that we have going on, our wonderful culture and our traditions here. We're always on the cutting edge. Why not? I don't get it. Like, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? I get extra $100 in my pocket. I don't know. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, it's well, fingers crossed that. So do you think he's got a good chance of making it all the way?
I think he does. I think he does. I'm a positive person. I believe in people that really genuinely are people, regular people. And I think he really wants to do good by our city. And I'm hoping that whoever it is mayor will do good by our city. That's all you can help for. And I think he has a good energy. And I think he speaks for a lot of us, families and, data driven. I think we need somebody like that. So I'm hoping.
Oh, Adriana, I forgot. We have to talk about one other thing before we wrap up.
What?
You live in the state of New York, which is led by a governor. What is your what do you? I personally think, like, there's enough people kind of coming out sharing their experiences that I don't know if it's all true or it's sort of different interpretations, but it's becoming so much of a distraction. I feel like he's not going to be able to govern effectively, right?
Yeah. First of all, he should have left while the going was good. Last year, when everyone was like, he's doing such a good job. And then he became too big for himself. And then, of course, all this came out. So it just infused into this big, he needs to get out. And I've been a victim of sexual abuse myself in the past. And I'm very transparent. And there's a lot of women that have. So when I've gone to my neighborhoods here and introduced myself, like, people have said, I don't know, this stuff is coming out with all these women. It must have been a plan to get him out. Okay, well, personally, it happens to a lot of women, and maybe this was just a time for them to speak up. And they feel more empowered to speak up. It happens more than people think, and it's just sad that people, and a lot of men, like, why is this happening now? How about why did it happen? Instead of why is it happening now? Why did it happen? So if all these women are coming forward, without a doubt, I believe them. Maybe, let's just say, maybe not 100% of them, but there's something there. And I tend to believe them first than a man who says, I didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding, we had a gentleman, Ron Kim, on the show a month ago. And, my sense is that Cuomo's known for, like, if you step out of line, like, he kind of kind of comes at you pretty hard. So I could imagine, like, why would any woman want to be the first one to stick her neck out there and then have her whole career kind of destroyed by what is a very powerful national figure?
Oh, without a doubt. I've been in that same situation myself, where I've made a complaint against somebody who was superior than I was, and he wasn't nice at all. He's very vindictive. If I tell you that he put me in the middle of nowhere as an officer at nighttime in a 12-hour shift in the winter, and nobody was allowed to come by. I was standing out there. Anybody came by, they would get in trouble. So these are men in power that whatever they did to the female feel they can do this. So I totally believe it. I totally get it, because it's happened to me. So I know, I know these men get full of themselves and they do whatever they want to do sometimes.
Well, who knows? Maybe next year we'll have a new mayor, a new governor, a new District 19 New York City Council member with the initials AA, and it'll be the start of a recovery and a new era for New York.
I hope so. I only pray for happier times, sunnier times. The vaccination is here. Everyone gets vaccinated. I just want everyone, especially the children. I want the kids to continue their lives as children and be happy and not be fearful of their grandparents, something happening. So I definitely want, and we all need that. We all need changes, and hopefully it's positive and we can just breathe a little better this year.
Well, Easter's around the corner, so maybe, that'll be the beginning of a rebirth, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's a plant. I'm going to sound really ridiculous, but there's a plant. Let me see if I can think about it. It's a purple plant that was coming out of the ground. I forgot. I meant to go meet one of my neighbors to introduce myself, and she's like, "Oh, a crocus." And I said, "Oh my God, those are beautiful." She's like, "Yeah, they're coming out, beautiful." I said, "Oh, that is a sign of good times to come." So, hopefully.
I love it. Well, Adriana, best of luck to you on your candidacy. And again, people I'm guessing you're probably are you looking for volunteers and donors, or how are things going with the campaign?
All of the above. I'll take whatever I can. It's been pretty good. I've been pretty happy with the way it's going. This week is petitioning. As you know, Andrew Yang is out there. All the mayoral candidates are out there. All city council is out there getting petition signatures. So I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty happy and positive. So
how close are you to the number of signatures you need?
So people who don't know, I don't know if you realize this, when you're new to these political circles, you learn things and you're like, oh, wow, that's crazy. So they lowered the number of signatures for city council, and it's 270 signatures of registered Democrats in your district, which doesn't sound too bad. It sounds pretty good. But when you have people that have been in these circles before, they go out there with their money and they hire people to get thousands of signatures.
Right.
So that there's no mistake. There's nothing wrong with your petition. So I personally don't have thousands of dollars. I personally don't have any money to do that. Which is fine, though, because I've been going door to door to meeting everyone in my neighborhood. So I'm hoping that by the end of this week, I just go a little bit above, and those signatures are gold. Those are district Democratic signatures, and hopefully I can move forward after this and not worry about everyone else getting thousands, hundreds of signatures. Yeah.
I mean, if you can go maybe 50% above the min, that might be even safer. But I understand, like, there's also time, and it's a difficult time to go door to door with COVID and everything. But I have heard that if someone wants to take out a candidate, the easiest way is to go through their petitions with a fine-tooth comb, and any little detail, just knock it out. And if they can remove you from the ballot that way, I guess it's politics. That's how they do it sometimes. So hopefully you'll have enough buffer so that if anybody tries that stuff, it'll bounce off of you.
Hopefully. Well, we'll see what happens, God willing. So
yes. All right. Well, keep up the great work, and say hi to your husband for me. I tell him I understand a lot of how he looks at things. It sounds familiar. And then I'm hoping your family and your kids are well and everybody's staying healthy, and fingers crossed. We'll
come here. Say hi. Come on.
Who's gonna say hi?
My little guy. Say hi. Hi.
Hey, can you say hello, nerds?
Say hello.
Hello, nerds.
Woo! All right, Adriana. With that, we're gonna say goodbye, nerds.
Ready? Want to do it together? Ready, loud. Goodbye, nerds.